What's up, YouTube? So we are back again at it. Whipped up some temporary metal lines to come out of the AOD trans, kicking them forward. Hopefully those line up. Try and kick them out somewhere in this general vicinity, and then rubber line it up to the oil cooler line. Again, temporary. Once I get everything stationary and set, then I'll re-hard line all the way forward. Leave a little bit cleaner. I got one of the swap meet distributors that I picked up, old OG 60s 70s era Ford points distributor that'll replace the Chinese one from O'Reilly's. And I'm basically just going to drop these back in. Once I get the trans lines kicked forward, the crossmember stuff is bolted in now, and then I'll be able to take it off. Jack stands on the front, re-jack up the rear, and then rebuild the brakes with all excuse me, all the new parts I have for that. So I've been kind of bouncing back and forth between the front and the back of this car. I also started looking at the headers. This is the stock set of headers that I just pulled out of the truck. When I did the tube headers on there, I think what I'm going to do, just because I still have the cutoff sections that I took off, I'm going to try and get these bolted up and see if that will remotely work. If this comes close, then I'm going to run these headers with these down pipes, and then I'm going to do some of that cheap flexi AutoZone whatever crap, just steel flexi pipe right into the mufflers. And that should help me with breaking this in without having to do a full exhaust on this setup. I also put in another small order for the fittings and the coolant intake stuff to finish buttoning up the intake, as well as the carb studs and the carb gasket that I need. So ideally the goal for tonight is to, one, get the trans lines in. Obviously they're way shorter than they need to be, but at least get those in and pitched forward so I can route rubber hoses down through here and over. I don't have a trans cooler yet, but if I can get the trans lines in, fixed to the actual transmission going forward, the rubber line part goes pretty quick and easy. If I can get the trans lines in, button up the rest of the intake. Distributor still needs a quick rebuild, not that big of a deal, but if I can get the trans lines, intake manifold stuff, and the headers or the stock cast crappy manifolds bolted on for now, that would be a win in my book. So we're gonna start messing around with all of that and we'll be back. So underneath the car it sucks because everything looks the same and everything's blurry down here, but 2 new trans lines coming out of the trans. The rough guesstimates that I made in my head looking at this morning when I went over to Buddy's shop and used their flare tool that I do not currently own but one day will. Got these 2 pitched forward, nothing fancy. Oh, look at that rust hole that's got to get fixed at some point. But out of the transmission we got the 2 lines coming out, feed and return. I will put a PSI gauge in here. I know a lot of people are talking, not a lot, but if you follow any of the Ford stuff or the AOD stuff, a lot of people say that you don't necessarily need a pressure gauge. Let's go back up top. So 2 trans lines kicked forward. That'll give me enough to work with. They're down underneath that wire and it's not going to focus, but those are going to kick forward. I'm going to run some just cheap, well, cheap-ish, way more expensive than fuel line, but run some rubber lines forward to the oil cooler that's going on the front of the radiator, because this radiator does not have a built-in cooling section at all for the trans lines. But I at least got that part done, so that's one thing crossed off the list. Now, the shorty tube headers that I got fit fine on the driver's side. Didn't try them on the passenger. I got 2 bolts just holding these in place. I might have to bust out the hammer and convince it to clear the steering box a little bit more once we actually get all of the bolts in. But for now, they're ceramic coated black, just shorty headers. Those should work. I think I got all the fittings for the intake manifold. So I'm gonna play with the intake, then move on to trying to get the exhaust roughly laid out, where I can just run some flexi section down to a set of mufflers that are dangling on the ground for break-in. I just want to hear the thing fire up and run. The drive shaft still needs to get made, but we're a ways off from that, and I'm out of money after this last weekend, so just kind of a matter of seeing how far I can get and what else I can keep working on. But we'll be back once I get the headers on. Exhaust manifolds are on. Now I gotta match up the pipes that I took off the truck to fit which side is which on here. This driver side drops straight down and then back, and then passenger side goes back and then down. So shouldn't be too complicated. 2-bolt flange, factory style with a donut in between. But if I can get those open pipes just kind of off the manifolds and back, then I can flexi pipe the rest. Not that I'm starting it today, but we're slowly getting closer and closer. Then I'll come back up on top and finish up the intake manifold, and then I'm hoping to drop this thing off the jack stands on the front tonight. Okay, so the cast manifolds are on, down pipes are kind of on. This one's super loose, I still gotta tighten that one up, but I can get to that one from the top. This side I snugged up both on the bottom. Not tight, still need to re-tighten them up before we actually go to start this thing, but that should be within the general wheelhouse. It's not gonna be an open header, wah, 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 you know, crazy obnoxious, piss off every neighbor in the neighborhood. It'll just piss off the ones immediately close to me. So, trans lines, cast manifolds, now we're on to button up the intake manifold. We'll be back. Well, we made good amount of little progress. I got all the intake stuff plumbed for the heater core, except for the crossover bridge line between the water pump and the intake thermostat housing. Then we got an Edelbrock 650 sitting on here. This is the one that came right off of the truck. I'm currently running a Summit 500 on the truck now, but this was working and honestly ran fine. I left the Summit on there. I got it for the van. It's going to go on the van eventually, but the amount of low end that I kind of picked up putting a 500 CFM carb as opposed to a 600 on the 302 or 50 that's in the truck now, I just kind of left it, and that's, as a daily driver, I kind of wanted the best gas mileage, the best all-around fun. That's currently sitting with the Summit 500 carb. I might get another Summit carb for this. This I would like to go bigger. I want at least a 600. I got a 650 on here now. I think this is a 600 or 650 Edelbrock. I got a 750 Holly at the shop that's rebuilt, ready to go on as well. This will most likely get a bigger carb because this one will be getting the absolute crap beat out of it all the time, and I only care about the top end. Not gonna be a daily driver, but the rest of the intake is plumbed. I gotta finish plugging that fitting. Got the thermostat gauge in, oil pressure gauge down there is in, might replace that one still, I haven't decided yet. Found the rest of the fuel lines going back to the tank that were already on here. Other than that, exhaust is on, intake manifold's relatively buttoned up. Getting closer and closer to being able to fire this thing up. I got a new set of points and condenser that are gonna go in this. Rerun the plug wires, retime the thing, throw some gas in it and see if it'll at least run. Will not drive, or nowhere near driving level, but if I can kick this motor over, throw some water and fluids in it, and see if it lights off and runs, then I'll get a lot more inspiration to get the rest of it done. So that's kind of where we're leaving off with the Falcon today. Stick around, like, subscribe, comment, all those other fun things. Appreciate it. Have a good one.